Yeah, so the thing that I've been thinking about is how really AI and technology as a whole, I will hear a lot of people say, "Oh, we are controlled by our technology now." And I see what they're saying. I see what they're saying of how, for example, the average 18 to 25-year-olds attention span is down. I think it's something staggering, like 200% from 18 to 25-year-olds 10 years ago. But I think that what we need to realize is that, yes, ultimately in society as a whole, technology does tend to have a lot more influence over what we do and the way that we do things. But I think on an individual level, technology only has the power over us that we let it have the power over us. I think just to use this as an example, I hear all too many times people of my generation saying just like, "Oh, I was just like lost in my phone and just couldn't stop scrolling for a long time." And I understand what they're saying is that they get sucked into TikTok or Instagram or something like that, and then they end up losing out on a bunch of time just scrolling through there and just essentially consuming whatever content happens to pop up. And in one sense, that makes sense. And that's also just what the technology is designed to make you do. That's how they make money, is by having you do that. But in another sense, having a mindset of saying that, just accepting that this is a natural thing and that it should be able to control you in a sense and be able to force you to spend more of your time on it than you're willing to, I think is possibly one of the most harmful ways that we can use technology, is by accepting the fact that it should have such a high role in our lives, and just realizing that actually having the power of being able to take your phone and put it down when you need to realizing that just because everyone else, for example, when you're taking a walk out in the woods, is taking pictures of cool things, or like in a zoo taking pictures and videos of animals, but the power of just being present, not having your phone out, and just observing what is there can make such a huge difference. I think this goes a little bit back to your point last week of just the power of being present in the real world. And ultimately, even though technology does make things easier for us, I think that we end up missing out on a lot of the growth that we can have when we instead actively can see, yes, technology could make this specific area of my life, this specific thing, easier, but I'm going to choose to not do that and instead do things the harder way or the more challenging way, or go about things in, I guess, the more traditional way in a sense, not just for the sake of tradition or for the sake of old things were better, but just for the sake of actually taking the time to learn and not take the easy road and develop the skills and just the personal growth that can come from that.
Yeah, it's somewhat terrifyingly insidious that we're not in a situation where we're being forced to doom scroll through our phones. We're choosing to. Mm-hmm. And that sounds horrible and terrifying until you sort of like shift your perspective and you go like, but you don't have to. Like, nobody's forcing you to. Like, Google is not holding a gun to your head and saying, so use my search engine. Facebook doesn't say scroll my stuff all the time. Like, at some level, you're choosing to do that. David, have you read the Chronicles of Narnia?
Yes.
So Silverchair, right? And so I think our listeners will probably know this too, but you know, the Silverchair, you have the witch, and she's saying that nothing exists. It's her underground kingdom is all that is there. There's never been anything else. And the children are about to succumb. It's Jill and it's Edmund, right? Yes. And so they're getting ready to succumb to it. And Puddleglum says, no, but there is something different. And then interestingly enough, he stamps on a coal and it burns his foot, and the smell of burnt marshwiggle, I think it's and I'm going back a little bit trying to remember it, is what everybody goes like, wait a second, there's something else going on. And then once they get out of that, they go, what, this is crazy, that we know that there's all this stuff. Like, we know there's a world out there. And so it's such an interesting thing. There's so many ways you can use that story, but it is an interesting thing for C.S. Lewis to have written that and to be very much a description of our current life, where nobody's forcing you to, AI is going to be very compelling, but AI will only have as much power of your life as you grant it. Mm-hmm. And to just all of a sudden saying something that's really obvious is becoming really important, and perhaps repeating it to ourselves. So if you're listening to this, you should be reminded, AI will only take as much of your life as you will give it. AI will only control as much of what you do as you allow it to control. AI will only take what you give. To this point, it's not running around like a Terminator robot taking something you don't want to give. It's going to be, you have to choose to sign up for ChatGPT. You have to choose to enter your stuff. You have to choose to live there. David, I live not too far from an old order Mennonite community. And so for those of you who are not familiar, it would be like an old order Amish community. And it's really cool because at some point, you're always reminded you don't have to do this. There are people who live their entire lives, very fulfilled, happy, joyful lives, who make money, who feed their families, who have a community that have opted out of all of it. They don't drive cars. That old word Mennonites around here use electricity. But if you go farther north from me, the Amish communities, they don't use electricity. They don't drive cars. They don't use the telephone. I mean, and you think that's crazy. Well, yeah, but there's a growing population of people who have decided that they can live like that. And, they're doing fine. And I'm not suggesting that you have to become Amish or Mennonite, but it is a good reminder that it is an optional participation gig. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to remember that. So,
yeah. Just the reminder that we have that choice is so powerful. And just the fact that in some ways, I think that you could make an argument that at least in character, those people who are in those Amish and Mennonite communities might have some elements of character growth and resilience that are not impossible, but much, much more challenging for us to develop when we are so accustomed to having so many things. And I think that's why purposefully choosing to not take the easy road or take the convenient thing is one of the easiest ways that you can catapult your personal growth forward and make yourself stand out in pretty much any aspect, career, personal, what have you, because it has become so uncommon to purposefully to use biblical language, deny yourself, and to take the harder path.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's a pretty good summary statement there. David and I's alternative ideas for today is to learn to love learning and learn to love making yourself miserable. And if you do those two things, I think it'll be, I do say that tongue in cheek, and it's worth a chuckle, but, actually, that's not too far off what we're saying. Look, if we can push some of these things together, AI represents a tremendous opportunity. Most people haven't even used it. If you want to go beyond most people and start using it, you're going to have a huge way to bend the curve. As David's article illustrated from IKEA, it looks like the minimum requirements just went higher. And so just understand that you're going to have to be more human to get a job and less robotic because the robot's going to take that job, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a warning that you should do that. If you want to be less robotic, one of the ways you can do that is learn to learn and learn to love learning and learn to love learning for its own sake. And that is going to put you well ahead of your competition and is going to be something that is unusual, especially in the short term here. So if you're looking for a fast way to differentiate yourself from everybody else, that's the way to do it. And then I think David's point here at the end is probably the most important. Challenge yourself, recognize you have a choice and choose to do the hard thing. Choose to put yourself in uncomfortable positions. Choose to have to learn. Choose to have to do those things that everybody else is not doing because they're cheating and whatever. And that ends up paying dividends that ultimately have some pretty big returns on those investments. And so that's a good thing to think about. And I think that's a pretty good set of alternative ideas to chew on and think about this week.
Well, hey, thank you for watching this clip of the Alternative Ideas podcast. If you want to listen into the full episode of this podcast, then you can check it out on our YouTube channel here. And make sure that you're subscribed if you find it interesting, because every single week we release a new episode and we're going to be putting out new clips. So you can make sure to get those in your subscriptions box every week.